Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Declan, and if you enjoy talking about movies in any way, shape or form, you're going to feel right at home here. In today's video we'll be discussing the news that we received yesterday, kind of following on from the news we discussed the other day about a new Transformers movie that is currently in the works at Paramount, and in this case particularly, which differentiates it from the other one, we have a live action Transformers movie also in the works which is slated for release in 2022. So along with the news that we received about 2 days ago or so about Josh Cooley developing a new Transformers animated prequel film, we also got the news yesterday that a new live-action Transformers film has been slated by Paramount to release on June 24th of 2022, and there has been a lot of speculation online, particularly among Transformers fans like myself, about what this movie will actually be. And what I want to do in this video is kind of discuss the multiple options that this film could go down, because, you know, on the surface this movie, there isn't really much information about it, there's not really a lot to make a video on. It is literally just a new live-action Transformers movie is happening, and here's when it's happening. We don't know any details, we don't know if it's the director, we don't know any of the cast coming back, we don't know what story it's going to be, anything like that. But what is interesting is, if you've been following a lot of the Transformers news over the last year or so, you'll know that there is actually some more details about this, that it could give us some indication what this movie may end up going to be, or what it may end up being, and I want to talk about those options here. So the first option to talk about is that this could just be Transformers 6, and what I mean by that is that this will just be the next movie in the Transformers live action movie franchise, and will follow on from 2017's Transformers The Last Knight. And this option, I think, is kind of the least likely of the three I'm going to mention here, which is why I'm starting off with it. I think that this sort of story with Transformers 6, although there is a story set up at the end of The Last Knight that could lead into this, you know, particularly to do with Unicron and the Quintessons and things like that, Quintessa still potentially being around, but particularly mainly with Unicron, which has kind of been a big threat that fans have been waiting to see for a while, particularly in the films. There is that story there. However, the reason why I don't believe this is going to be Transformers 6 is because I think that there's just not a lot of love left in that series, I'm afraid. As much as I love them, you know, and as much as many others do enjoy them as well, the movies were dwindling money-wise. Obviously, quality, they've never been great. But in terms of the money, they were dwindling. As the years have gone on, you know, there was a point in time where they got bigger, and they kind of peaked around Dark of the Moon in terms of movie box office-wise, particularly domestically. And then Age of Extinction really didn't do well in the domestic box office. The foreign box office managed to save the movie, and it still made over $1 billion thanks to the Chinese audience for that film. But The Last Knight just made around 500 million, I believe it was, which, you know, by a generic film standard is pretty good, but by a Transformers movie standard and by Hollywood standards, it was pretty much a bomb. So there's kind of this fear, I think, for Paramount, where they don't want to invest another, you know, shit ton of money to make a new Transformers film, a new live-action Transformers film that might not particularly do well at the box office, because again, I just don't know if the love or the attention or the need is there from an audience for a new Transformers film, particularly in the live-action movie franchise. As much as I'd love to see Transformers 6, and as much as I'd love to see that story continue, I really want to see Unicron, I really want to see all that stuff, I just feel like Paramount don't want to take the risk, at least right now. Now, these next two, I'm not sure which one is more likely to happen. I think it's purely going to come down to whichever one gets finished first, or which one gets off the ground first, because there are two Transformers films that have kind of been in the works over at Paramount, and I think this date is going to be for one of them, but it just depends whichever one gets going. So firstly, there is apparently a Beast Wars movie in production. Now, Beast Wars is a very specific niche of Transformers. It's a specific area of Transformers that focuses on these particular Cybertronians that are very much primitive, and they do focus very much on being kind of animal-like creatures. And Beast Wars is something that I don't know if it's a good idea. Is it cool? Yes, and I would like to see it. But I think with Beast Wars and the characters in Beast Wars, I feel like that's something you'd want to introduce in a movie, you know, kind of with other characters, not necessarily just give them their own movie straight off the bat. Because even though the Beast Wars is kind of a separate story from the main Transformers story for the most part, I don't know if it's really a good idea to give them their own movie straight away without introducing them first. I think it would be smarter to maybe do Transformers 6 and then maybe introduce the Beast through that, maybe through a flashback, or maybe if they do just want to show them up in the modern day, which I wouldn't put it past them at this point. Because think about it with the Dinobots. When they introduced the Dinobots into Age of Extinction, if they would have just done a Dinobots movie straight off the bat, as cool as it would have been, I would have been completely against it, because I think it would have been really strange. And I kind of feel the same about Beast Wars, and I just said previously about how Paramount don't want to take the risk with Transformers 6. I don't know if they'd really want to take a risk with Beast Wars either. I don't know if that's exactly a better alternative. If anything, I think it might be a worse alternative. I get the idea of doing something fresh and new, and maybe if people don't really know it's Transformers, they might go see it. I kind of get that logic behind it, but at the same time, Transformers is still a brand name, it's still got recognition, and it's still got a huge fan base. I don't know if just doing a Beast Wars movie will really attract people, because unless you're a Transformers fan, and obviously you know what Beast Wars is, general audiences aren't going to know what Beast Wars is, and I think as a concept, if it's not connected to Transformers, people are going to look at Beast Wars and go, well, what even is this? It just looks really weird and dumb. And I can understand that, so I don't know if this Beast Wars film is really the best way to go. It could happen, and again, apparently it's in the works, but I just don't know if, Paramount wanting to throw away Transformers 6, I don't know if this is the best alternative they could go for. Now, the next and final option I want to talk about is Bumblebee 2, or a Bumblebee sequel. This, I think, is probably the most likely of all of them. Bumblebee did come out in 2018. I adored Bumblebee. I thought it was so good. And it was genuinely a Transformers film that actually got audiences back on board. People were like, okay, this one's actually kind of good. And it was genuinely emotional. It was heartfelt. It was lovely. And, I said in my last Transformers video, I was crying from within the first 5 minutes of Bumblebee because of how amazing the Cybertron sequences were. And Bumblebee, could it get a sequel? For me personally, Bumblebee ends in a way where I'm kind of like, I don't know where you're going to go with a Bumblebee sequel without it just feeling like a Transformers movie, because Optimus shows up at the end and you see the other Autobots kind of coming into Earth, so I'm like, well, if Bumblebee's going to follow on the story in a sequel, it's just going to be a Transformers movie, because you're going to have Optimus there, you're going to have all these other characters there. Also, Haley Steinfeld's character of Charlie is elsewhere. She leaves by the end of that film, so I'm like, well, if you're going to do a Bumblebee sequel, would you call it Bumblebee, or would it just be a Transformers movie that just follows on from Bumblebee? So, I don't know. But the thing is with Bumblebee, it was extremely successful with critics. People really tended to like that movie a lot. And with the fans, it was a complete love letter to Transformers. It was really like the 80s. It had that feel to it. It had that vibe to it. And of course, all the character designs, they looked like the classic designs. Bumblebee was a VW bug. Optimus was the old Struck style. It was very much a love letter to, that old style of Transformers. And even though by the end of Bumblebee, we do see Bumblebee, kind of transform into the 1974 Camaro, and Optimus shows up as well, I still think there are ways about it. So, in terms of Bumblebee 2, I do think it's the most likely of the three, but at the same time, I don't know if it will necessarily be called Bumblebee 2, because just based on where Bumblebee ends, I could see it just being another Transformers movie, but almost slightly a reboot. Because I feel like this is what they could be doing. Like, with Bumblebee, they could be setting up this new reboot series, which could kick off, because what was good about the ending of Bumblebee was where it ended, you can kind of see, obviously, it would connect to the original Transformers film, or they could go in a different direction with it. So I think that with Bumblebee, if they do a sequel, it could be really clever for them to actually just reboot it from there and go from there, which personally, while I love the original five films, I would be happy if they wanted to just do a reboot and just go from there. I'd be happy with that. So for me personally, I think the most likely option out of the three we've spoken about today is a Bumblebee sequel, but whether they actually go with it or what direction they go with it, I'm not all that sure. But what do you guys think? Are you excited about a new Transformers movie? And if you are, what direction do you think they're going to be in? Do you think which of the three we discussed today do you think it's going to be? Or do you have your own theories or your own ideas? Perhaps it could be a completely different thing, a completely different reboot. Whatever you think, let me know in the comments down below. I love talking about Transformers, so make sure you start a discussion down there. And as always, guys, if you want to see more movie news and movie-related videos just like this one, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any uploads from me. And hope to see you guys again next time.